In 2003, a Melbourne company called Advanced Polymer Recycling embarked on a project that would revolutionise the construction and manufacturing industries. They had developed a method of recycling a specific plastic material that was currently being dumped into landfill worldwide.
I attended a conference in Tampa in Florida, and would have been 2,000 people in there talking about barrier packaging, multi-layer packaging, and how it was going to affect the US after their little exercises with poisoning in products. I asked the question in the open forum, what about recycling? And you could have heard a pin drop in the auditorium. Nobody has any idea of how to really recycle these types of products.
The company was awarded a $1.5 million research and development start grant from an Australian government organisation known as AusIndustry. The project was due to be completed over the next 3 years.
And that is what we commercially made here on a 24-hour, 7-day-a-week operation. It's just a foam, 100% recycled foam underlay for the carpet industry. We then developed a new type of product which was denser and smoother, but that technology was developed in China. I eventually went to work in America and developed an even better product which was readily acceptable by the American market in most of the Home Depot and Lowe's outlets, which there was about 6,000. And eventually I won the award in Las Vegas for the most unique product by developing a totally different approach and developing something that looked remarkably like virgin material. And the other side of the coin was a lot of the plastic was going to be developed into a building product. So we had vertically integrated our technology into the building industry in a big way, and we were successful. And yet in 2006, the middle of 2006, the Federal Police raided all the buildings here, and under the allegation that I'd put in a fraudulent application on a research and development grant.
And what it's cost these guys, and I guess cost the Australian public as a whole regarding employment, you know, how this technology will save toxic chemicals going to landfill, etc. It is just inconceivable that these guys can have been, had their lives destroyed for want of proper due diligence. It's just astounding.
AusIndustry is an Australian government organisation designed to support companies involved in research, development and innovation in science and technology. Companies look to AusIndustry for legitimacy and backing from the Australian government. Multi-layered plastics are found in safety glass, car windscreens, food packaging and laminates. They are currently unrecyclable and not only highly toxic, but tons of the material makes its way into landfill every year. Gary Price and Greg Shah developed an innovative process that recycled multi-layered plastics and transformed the material into a usable form for the construction and manufacturing industry.
I applied for a research and development grant along with Greg Shah and Dr. Marcel Siddle in 1999 with a passion and a belief of being able to recycle co-extruded materials. Previously, these have never been recyclable before.
And all of it goes to the tip because nobody can recycle it. Hence, we developed a project and a process that we believed was going to be fully commercial. We were getting very close to the commercial output end of where we wanted to head. We still had lots of further ideas to go with.
The project was well underway, but unbeknownst to the owners, AusIndustry had started a secret investigation that set the stage for risk managers from the banks funding the project to question their support for the factory.
And so we went to a third bank, and the bank manager I already knew, and he came back and said, "Gary, I can give you the money. I can give you the loan and approve it, but I can't give you the money." And he said, if I told you why, I would lose my job. So what had actually happened is the federal police had already interviewed my banks.
But then all hell broke loose after what has occurred to us with the AusIndustry and the Federal Police.
And so on the morning of the raid, I only heard the screeching of brakes in our car park, and I was in my office with my bank manager. And next minute, 30 Federal Police surged through the building. So you can imagine the effect that had on my bank manager, and also on the perception. My home was raided with my mother dying. My neighbours thought that I was obviously involved in drugs or something. I knew then what I know now. I would have basically just packed up and walked out. But we were told that Greg Shah and myself were, the allegation was that we'd put in a fraudulent application on a research and development grant 6 years prior. And yet the outcome of the research was positive, and we'd been successful. We had built this, this enormous complex. The allegations were that we had put in a fraudulent application, even though we'd had 5 attempts and 2 physical demonstrations. The allegation was that that had all been overlooked.
We had everything going for us. We had a massive contract with Bridgestone Consumer Products making carpet underlay. We had huge potential. We actually signed up a distribution agreement with Leon Acan to distribute our product coming off the multi-layer materials. We had interest from overseas, from many companies. We had Cryovac organisation were fairly keen to see us be successful, because they were going to be a major recipient of getting rid of their material and diverting their material from the landfill. We had companies in Germany that Swade Pack who were interested because we were taking a lot of their materials. We had other companies in the US from some of the major manufacturers there who were interested, Iowa, Arkansas. There was a number of different companies. Now, once they did thump on the door, we were very surprised. Why were we being targeted for fraud when we haven't been doing anything that was wrong? We were only trying our best to resolve a technical issue, one that has an impact on many people. So, yeah, very hard to piece together.
It could have been resolved if, again, AusIndustry and the Federal Police had just done due diligence. If they had have asked the right questions, it's fairly simple. If someone's made an accusation, and obviously for prior art to come into it, somebody has obviously made an accusation that these guys have done the wrong thing. Well, I have a very simple analogy, and that is, if someone's made the allegation and you've got Gary and Greg and their companies demonstrating their technology, everyone's convinced, they give them the grant, and you've gone through that process, and a very stringent process is for them to get to that stage with the grant, then surely you would reverse that and say to the people that have made the accusation, okay, we're satisfied with what they've come up with, you're making the accusation, you do the same.
We had built this, this enormous complex, and yet the allegations were that that we had put in a fraudulent application, even though we'd had 5 attempts and 2 physical demonstrations. The allegation was that that had all been overlooked, and then even though we were successful in the outcome over a 3-year period, and we'd built this complex, we'd still made a fraudulent application, whatever that meant. But we were never told who made the allegations or why. And after about a 3.5-year investigation, we were found innocent. But I'd lost everything, and so had Greg Shah. We were both bankrupted.
And the fact that the officer in charge at the Federal Police mentioned that it was not to do with the money. It's like we hadn't stolen any money, we hadn't done anything wrong with the money, yet we were being alleged that we committed fraud by taking money from the Commonwealth. So it just didn't make any sense. They didn't expect that they would find a Porsche parked in the backyard or a Ferrari or a boat, but the guy said to us, this detective said, it's all about prior art. And for somebody to say something that's all about prior art, it's a very specific term that is only really used in the fields of research and development or teaching, or it's to do with bodies of knowledge and the like. So it's a very strange phrase to come out. And of course, it was denied that was ever said to us as we went down the path. But yeah, look, it's not a good experience. Certainly I was worried then for the fact that they may come to my house where I was living and conduct another search. I was living with my in-laws, and you don't want to disturb anybody. I know Gary's situation and poor Shirl, who was recovering, she was convalescing from cancer at home, and she was exposed to the federal police. I mean, all of that is a very, very stressful situation.
My mother died 4 weeks after the raid, 4 or 5 weeks. They'd raided my home with my mother dying. The low point, I guess, she woke up out of a coma, put her hand on my arm, and it was like as though she was just normal. And she just said, "Do not let them beat you." Lay back on the pillow and died. That will remain with me for the rest of my life. That is something that I'll never forget.
They've launched this ridiculous investigation. Who knows what it cost and monetary value and tying up of federal police and their assets. 3-year full investigation. It should never have happened. And the problem is those same bureaucrats are still in a position to do this to anyone else that puts their hand up for a government grant. And, at a time when the federal government has said, look, we're prepared to put $1 billion out there to get Australian businesses to come forward, build on technology, make us the smart country, start exporting rather than importing, and we've got the perfect vehicle here, everything's done, and they set about and destroyed them. And the worst thing about it all is they can't even get a letter of apology so they can go back to their associates, their banks, to start again. They've been hung out to dry with no recourse, and it's extremely disappointing, and it's frightening actually that sort of scenario can unfold in Australia.
After the conclusion of the AFP's investigation into the alleged prior art, Gary Price and Greg Shah, with the help of Jerry Raleigh and support from the Australian Greens leader, Senator Christine Milne, were able to obtain documents from the AFP through the Freedom of Information Act. The documents they received were sanitised, and segments of the documents were missing key details and information pertaining to the investigation, masking who or where the accusation came from.
If we really think about the baseline behind who could benefit or why this allegation was made in the first place, it is something that's been dear to my heart and thinking for a long time.
By 2010, I've never received a letter to say I'm not allowed to work on this technology anywhere else in the world, and yet I've taken it to China and America and then returned home. But I've never received any warning or any company or individual to say that I'm not allowed to work on that technology or that area of that technology anymore. It was so important to the federal government to bring in the federal police. It was so important that I had done such an enormously bad thing, and yet they couldn't even make a 40-cent phone call and yet they destroyed a business worth over $100 million. I personally lost over $20 million, and it was so important to them to send in the federal police. And yet what's it achieved? We've now got a company importing plastic on one side from China. There's no manufacturing at all. So what was the purpose? And yet I'm still not allowed to know.
I don't know how they've got through it. And for the government to just turn their backs and say, sorry guys, you know, it happens. It's not good enough.
Gary Price and Greg Shah wanted one thing that they felt was fair and that they deserved: a formal letter of exoneration from the Australian government. In 2010, they received a response from Senator Carr's office, but were unable to help in the matter. After approximately 3 years of being investigated by the Australian Federal Police, Gary Price, Greg Shah and Dr. Marcel Siddle, who were operating as Advanced Polymer Recycling, were cleared of any wrongdoings by the AFP. But by that stage, they had become bankrupt, lost their assets as well as their good standing reputations. Up until today, they still do not know who made the accusations that caused the Federal Police to investigate them, and one question remains in their minds: who is accountable for what happened?
As far as accountability, AusIndustry definitely accountable. It was their department that made the allegations. Murray Doofus, who was the case handler, somebody in there should have had the sense to ask the question. Okay, whoever's made the allegation, whether it's a company, a multinational, an individual, it's obviously somebody with a lot of pull, a lot of clout, because we've only been able to get so far.
And the total frustration is not knowing why or who. Who made the allegations? I still to this day do not know. And I still don't know why. What was their motivation? And AusIndustry were there to work with us. They're there to nurture Australian niche technology and work with us. They did everything possible to destroy us. For the sake of a 40-cent phone call, nothing needed to happen.
However, it is possible that academia gets its nose out of joint and tends to suffer from tall poppy syndrome in a couple of instances. And you know, there's potential that somebody might have personally benefited from knowing that they'd brought us down because we were doing better than they were. But again, there's no commercial benefit. There's no reason why they'd want to see me bankrupted, my whole life destroyed, along with Gary's and Leon's. It just doesn't make a lot of sense.
The Greens were accommodating. Christine Milne's office went forward, got 2 lots of freedom of information. Each time we got it, it was sanitised. There was a lot of information missing. They demanded a second time that we get FOI from the Federal Police. That was sanitised as well. So there's a massive cover up here, and even though the Greens did a good job getting us so far, when we got to the point of having the door shut in our face as far as freedom of information the second time, I asked of Christine Milne's office, why can't this be brought up in question time on the floor of Parliament, and put the pressure on Greg Combay, the Minister responsible for AusIndustry.
I've tried to talk to AusIndustry since then, and I naively thought that after I was found innocent and Greg was found innocent, that we would be welcomed back. We were treated like lepers. I've tried to contact Kim Carr when he was head of AusIndustry, Greg Combay. I've gone through the Greens. The freedom of information from the Federal Police has all been blanked out. Why? Why has all of this, and in terms of the technology, billions of dollars lost?
So they're all well aware of it. Now, they can't just turn their back on it, you know, and that's what they're doing. And it's almost like a conspiracy. We get so far and everyone's protecting everyone else. We went to the Small Business Commission and said, listen guys, this is a small business. It's ballooning. It would have been a big business by now with all their international contracts and they were building factories overseas. But as it is, you people are responsible for it. You know, this comes under the umbrella of the Small Business Commission. They said, no, it's too big for us. And I said, okay, we'll refer it to the ACCC, whether it be a multinational or the federal government. This comes under your portfolio. You'll have to look after these guys. And we're told, no, we're not going to do it. We're not going to pass it on. So it's almost like a conspiracy. Everyone's protecting everyone else.
We had a beautiful boardroom. They could have come down, got Greg Shah, myself, or Dr. Marcel Siddle, sat us down and said, listen, these are the allegations. We've got the federal police up that end, and if you don't answer it properly, they're going to have a chat with you. Now, here's the things that we want to know. But the people are faceless people who have made allegations and nothing happens. We lose everything. Australia loses the niche technology, and yet after a 3.5 year investigation, the best we get is, sorry, no hard feelings, move on with your life.
Who would benefit from us failing? I still haven't been able to come up with any particular answer in that area. There's a number of commercial entities. The bank certainly wouldn't want to have seen us fail. It was their money that we were utilising along with ours. We were producing product from our second company for another major international company, and they wouldn't want to have seen us go under because we were producing a product that they needed. So I haven't been able to pin it, and that's what's very frustrating as to what's gone on.
On the morning of Monday, the 11th of July, Kim Carr appeared on the ABC breakfast program and a news conference announcing his new position back as Minister for Science, Industry and Trade. In that interview, he made comments which I will quote, that scientists need to be supported and encouraged to make us the smarter country. Australian people look to us to make sure they get a fair go. We've all learnt we need to become fairer. Innovation is about ensuring our industry is protected and supported, and now is the time to accelerate our efforts by investing in research and development. When I heard those comments, I nearly choked. 10 minutes after that, Kevin Rudd came on, referring to Kim Carr's new position, and stated that in this country, we will never, ever, ever let a fair go be thrown out the back door. Again, I almost choked. We've had contact with Kim Carr's office, asked them if they'd like to comment. They declined. They'd had almost 2 weeks to step up, didn't want to know. Louise Asher, the Minister for Innovation and Small Business, was also asked to comment. This falls under her portfolio, and Greg and Gary are virtually her constituents. She's declined as well. Didn't want to know. So where are you left? Well, in my opinion, if you're in business in this country, picture yourself out on a vast ocean in a very, very small boat, because that just about sums up where you are if you need help and you need any form of justice.